Okay, Daniel chapter 8 this afternoon. Probably it's a shorter chapter, only 27 verses. But again, like Daniel really always is in every chapter, pretty jam-packed with some stuff. So we'll see how far we actually get in our time. We might end early, we might not. I don't know. Can't make any promises. But let's do a quick review of what happened in Daniel chapter 7. Well, before that, let's pray. Who would want to pray?
I shall.
You should pray.
I shall pray.
Oh, okay.
Dear God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for this class. I know that we all enjoy it. And I pray that what we learn from today, Lord, and what we learned in the past, Lord, we can just make it applicable. And if people ever ask us about the book, we can give them our for sure knowledge and why we know what we know. In Jesus' name,
Amen. Great. So, we remember from last week, we talked about Daniel 7 beginning as kind of like a vision that encompasses really the rest of the book of Daniel. The one vision of Daniel 7 is kind of the foundation that's laid, and then the subsequent visions of that we'll see in Daniel 8 and then 9 through 11 really are kind of the details of the vision of the four beasts in Daniel 7. So we remember, what were the four beasts? You guys remember from your notes?
It was like the lion with the wings of like eagles.
Yep, that was the
Face of
first
a
one.
man.
Face of a man.
Face of a man, right. So
And then
first one was lion with
Second one
wings.
was the bear with the ribs in the mouth.
Yep. Bear with how many ribs? Do you guys remember?
3.
Yep.
And then the leopard.
Yep. What was significant about the leopard?
He also had wings, right?
He had wings. He had specifically
Eagle's wings?
a number of wings.
4.
4.
4. And how many heads?
4.
Yep.
Oh, so
Oh,
done.
that's right. And then the most
And
terrifying
then we don't know.
Right.
face.
Just scary.
Very terrible. That is evidence again in
Horns.
Revelation. Yeah. Specifically the little horn that we've discovered is the Antichrist. So what did the lion with wings represent with the face of a man?
That wasn't that the Babylonian Empire?
Correct, the Babylonian Empire. Because we saw that it's kind of like their official mascot with the face of a man, especially also the connection by which it was given the mind and likeness of a man. Give me that picture of, Daniel chapter 4, with Nebuchadnezzar being humbled by the Lord because of his arrogance. The bear with 3 ribs was then
Medo-Persian.
the Medo-Persian Empire, MP Empire, and the ribs represented the 3 regions that they took over, correct? Babylon, Egypt, and
Like Sicilia or not
Lydia.
Sicilia, Lydia.
that's right. Got it? Good, you guys are
Cecilia?
getting it good.
That's like a small island.
Understanding. Then we had the leopard with the 4 wings, 4 heads, which represented
The
Greece.
Greek
the
Empire.
Grecian Empire. Why did it have 4 heads?
Because of the 4 subdividing kingdoms.
That's right. And what were those 4? Without looking at your notes.
The Sulibians.
I'm not gonna get
The Seleucids.
Seleucids. The one where the P is silent.
The piece. The one with the P is silent. Yes.
The
Ptolemaics.
Ptolemaics.
Yep. Okay.
Ptolemaics.
Can I look at my notes?
There's
Starts with a C.
almost said Catros, not the Catros. Cascade, not Cascade.
You're getting it.
Standard.
Cassander. Oh, look at that. Teamwork.
Okay, that's 3. What's the last one? The one that's kind of the most phonetically difficult.
What's it start with? I got this.
I
Starts with an
don't
L.
really don't know.
C.
Starts with an L.
L.
Oh, no.
Lu. What's the second letter?
A Y.
Licentious. License.
No.
Oh, I heard a
Lignance.
C.
I don't know.
Lysimachus.
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 Moccasins. So yeah, the Seleucids, the Ptolemaics, Cassander, and the Lysimachus. Daniel 8 is now really the specifics of the Grecian Empire, which we're going to be looking at more to the history. So that's what we're going to look forward to with Daniel 8. And then, of course, we described in great detail in the second half of our class last week of what the great and terrible beast represented. Speaking of a form of the Roman Empire, right? Form of the Roman Empire. Having 10 horns, that equals the 10 toes of the feet mixed with clay of Daniel chapter 2. 3 of those horns were pulled up by the roots, and in the place of it was a little horn. The little horn, of course, is the Antichrist. We're going to be looking at more about that in the subsequent chapters, 9 through 11 into 12 a little bit, 12 verse 5 or so. So great. So Daniel chapter 8 now, again, is the vision of the ram and the goat, which is going to take a specific focus on, in the wrong place, the Grecian Empire. So what, okay, again, let's for review, what is our main focus of Daniel?
Grecian.
God's sovereignty in the midst of an evil land.
I
Yes.
was going to say Daniel 8, so I was ready to answer that.
Yeah, that's right. In the midst of an evil land. Okay, cool. Just for remembrance of that, from our studying all the way up to Daniel chapter 8, what is now different in chapter 8 of Daniel?
It's now
Oh, it's
not
not
chronological.
It's not, well, no, that was in
Yeah.
chapter 7. That's good though.
Is it back in Hebrew?
It's back in Hebrew, correct. Daniel now reverts to Hebrew from ancient Aramaic, reverts back to Hebrew. It was Aramaic with a little smattering, a couple of Persian words in there. That's just our understanding of the culture and the history. Back to Hebrew. Let's ask the question, why? Why do you guys think, from your understanding of Daniel up to this point, why is the need of Daniel reverting back to Hebrew?
Because it's not chronological.
Well, it's not chronological, right?
Is,
He may be writing chronologically, you know what I mean? Like he's
Okay.
writing the book and recording it, but the events that unfold in his book are not chronological. So we can actually think of, okay, he's writing Hebrew at the very beginning of chapter 1, then at the beginning of chapter 2
Right.
through chapter 7, it's Aramaic, and now he's in Hebrew. Why would he now write in Hebrew?
Because
Because
he's no
he's now-
longer under
yeah,
Babylon.
he's retired, so he's like, I can go back to Hebrew because I want to.
Okay, but when we look, that's a good thought. But when we look at verse 1 of chapter 8, what does it say?
In the third year of King Belshazzar.
So who's Belshazzar?
But that was Nebuchadnezzar's great grandson.
So what empire is that?
That's still the Babylonians.
So he's still Babylonian. So he's not in the Medo-Persian yet.
But was he retired at this point then?
What's that?
Was he still like retired, quote unquote?
Well, he's old now.
But he's still.
He's not retired. He's in his old age. He's still a wise man. He's still in the authority above all the magicians at that time, right? Because we're not at the point yet in the events that are unfolding in his writing. We're not at the events yet of chapter 5, right? Because it's the third year of Belshazzar's reign. We're if we do the math historically, if it's the third year of the reign of Belshazzar, it is, let me double check. Let me see. I don't have this down completely. 551 BC is the events of Daniel chapter 8. So we're kind of looking at almost 11 years before the establishment of the Medo-Persian Empire, okay? And that's significant. Daniel 8, 551 BC. That's significant because what we're going to be looking at in this vision is something different than in his experience of his visions before. We're going to see something happen to him that's different. That happens really in the very first verses of 1 through 3. So let's unfold this now. Okay, so it reverts back to Hebrew. Nobody really knows, but speculation is he's starting to write now towards the cautioning or the exhortation now to Jewish people, right? because now it's the entrance into the Medo-Persian Empire. If he's interpreting these visions correctly, now in his old age, near his death, he's going to have that understanding of now these 70 years have passed. The Hebrew people, the Israelites, are going to be coming back to Jerusalem. Okay? And so these are all future events in the eyes of Daniel. They're history for us and some future for us, but mainly they're history for us. But it's all future for Daniel. So it's important for us to kind of keep that perspective of where in the present time is Daniel experiencing this. So let's begin. Let's look at verses 1 through 3 and hopefully we'll get some clarity. Actually, let's go through verse 4. Chapter 1 through verse 4. Or excuse me, chapter 8, verse 1 through 4.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar.
Yep.
Well, I never know which one it is.
That's okay.
A vision appeared to me, Daniel, after which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw in the Susa in the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw the vision, and I was at Ulai Canal.
Mm-hmm.
I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up at last. I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great.
Okay, so when we do our little bit of our investigation, we look at verse 1 and we get some historical perspective. 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, so that means he's in the Babylonian Empire, correct? A vision appeared to me, Daniel, and look specifically, after that which appeared to me at the first. What was it that appeared to him at the first?
The 4 beasts.
The 4 beasts, right. So this is chronological in the sense of him writing down this prophecy, but not chronological in the whole scope of the book of Daniel, because it's still in chapter 5, right, in the narrative portion, okay? So it's after the vision of the 4 beasts. So why is that important? It's important, again, because the vision of chapter 8 only evidences, it only gives even more foundation to the previous vision that he had of the 4 beasts and the interpretation of that. So if we've interpreted Daniel 7 correctly, saying that it's the Babylonian Empire, Medo-Persian Empire, Grecian Empire, Roman Empire, which is the prefigurement of a future empire of the Antichrist, then that should also give us clarity on what the interpretation of this vision will be in chapter 8. And what's great about this vision of chapter 8 is we don't have to really do much speculation behind it, because what we'll discover is that an angel appears, a very specific angel, appears to Daniel and says, hey, let me tell you all about what this vision means. So it makes it easier on all of us. Questions? Okay, great. So, he's there in the 3rd reign of King Belshazzar. He's in Babylon. He gets this vision, and then look what it says here. Verse 2. I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was at the Ulai Canal. Cameron did a great job of pronouncing those words. This is different now than any of the visions that he's had before. Why? Because he's now been transported. He's actually been moved from Babylon to 200 miles east of Babylon to Susa the citadel. And that's an important thing, because Susa, let me write this down, Susa was, according to the Babylonian Empire, not a very significant city, not a very significant place. But what's interesting is if we connect this to the future, Susa actually becomes the capital of the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay? So Susa, in the province of Elam, so we'll just kind of do Elam, this becomes the capital of the MP Empire. You guys get what I mean when I write MP, correct? All right? So, not only is Daniel shown a vision, he is transported 200 miles east of Babylon to Susa the citadel, and which would ultimately become the capital of the Medo-Persian Empire. But the Medes and the Persians, they don't invade Babylon for another 10 years. Okay? Don't invade Babylon for another 10 years. All right? So that's significant. It's in a way the Lord using Daniel to say, hey, this is not just a prediction of the future. This is God in his sovereignty in the midst of an evil land, orchestrating and showing Daniel in a visual, this is what will happen. So a quick question. Has anyone else in Scripture, either Old Testament or New Testament, been transported before? From one place to another? Philip? Yeah? What happened with Philip?
He somehow was walking and they ended up in the desert with the Ethiopian eunuch.
Okay. Who else?
Was it Elijah? Elisha, one of those?
Ezekiel was? Ezekiel chapter 8,
Oh,
verse 40.
that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about this real quick. Chapter 8 and chapter 40. Again, we have Philip. I believe that was Acts chapter 20, if I'm not mistaken. No, excuse me. That's way before. That's even before Paul. So that's chapter 8, verse 40. And then, of course, John in Revelation. Chapter 17, verse 3. So, this is not something that is unique to Daniel. It's something that the Lord has done. So, in a modern context, I don't know if that's happened before. But we do see miracles. So what does he see? He's transported to a specific place that holds specific reasoning for him in this vision that he's going to encounter. And what does he see? He sees a ram, and what's specific about this ram in its description? Look at the text.
2 horns.
2 horns.
Standing by the canal,
By the canal, right?
and the horns are long.
Okay.
One longer than
One's longer than the other, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 horns, one longer than the other. And then again, another thing specifically, it says both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. Okay? I saw the ram charging westward, northward, and southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased, and he became great. All right? So, there's that visual that the Lord presents to Daniel. It charged where? Northward, southward, westward, but not eastward, right? Yeah. There's reasoning behind that. And so, again, because chapter 8 is very, very good in the interpretation, skip forward and look at chapter 8, verse 20. What does verse 20 say?
As for the ram that you saw with the 2 horns, these are the kings of the Media and Persia.
There you go. Right?
Yeah.
Very simple for us. So not only does that substantiate our speculation of the vision of chapter 8 here, but it also substantiates chapter 7, correct?
Why does it say Media?
Media, because that was just there's the Medes, we say America and Americans.
Yeah.
So there's media and there's the Medes. Okay? Yep. So we have this ram, it has 2 horns, one is higher, they both are high, one is higher than the other. It's charging westward, northward, and southward, but not eastward. And we see from Gabriel, the angel, he tells us in verse 20, he gives us a clue, it is the Medes and the Persians. So really, for Daniel, it's not very hard for him to say, you know what, this is the Medes and the Persians. Why? Because this ram specifically was, I guess, the official mascot of the Medes and the Persians, right? What do we think of an animal when we say the United States of America?
Eagle.
Yeah,
Bald
a bald eagle. So what happens when you're hanging out, you're drinking your Coke, All of a sudden you have this vision and you're brought out to some place that you've never been before, and out of the horizon shoots this gigantic bald eagle, and you know the Lord has given you a vision. Well, what obviously do you connect with this great bald eagle?
America.
America, correct. Yeah. On Purple Mountain's majesty and all that stuff. So, yeah, so that's similar, the reaction that I would assume that Daniel would have with seeing this ram. The symbol of the ram was the official emblem of the empire, where it was signified on coins as well as the headdresses of the Persian rulers. And so we see this ram pushing westward, southward, northward, so that no animal could withstand him. Okay, there's reason behind this. Okay, let me see if I can do this
Did
right.
you say it's both the Persian and the Medes, or this is specifically the ram is the Persians?
Yeah, the ram is the Medes and the Persians, but there's reasoning behind it because we'll see with the two horns, it's the partnership, it's the union between the two.
Oh.
Okay. But let me just try to draw for you a crude map real quick. So, come across here, do that, and then connect this way. And then we have, okay, over here. So, if you guys can work with me here, here's Saudi Arabia, here's modern day Turkey, right? Here is Israel, Lebanon, up to Syria, and then over here we have, I guess, what you would consider Egypt, okay? Right? So, Babylon would be coming from the east this way, right? Oh, we gotta get way over here too. There's Greece. Sorry, guys. It'd be better if I had a better map. You guys can look at it. Well, you know what? Take a look. Go in the back. Everybody's got a Bible. Everybody has a map in their Bible, right?
I don't have a map.
You don't have a map in your Bible?
NIV.
Are you joking?
It's the new and correct version. I mean,
Oh my
there's
goodness.
No way. It's fancy.
It'd be so much better.
You've gotten so much flack for that.
Really?
Yeah, they're all like, you know what? But I'm sure
They're-
we'd rather this than no Bible.
I need
I'm
to get
sure
a
it's
new
okay.
Bible.
No problem.
I need a better one.
Okay. So here's something. Well, is that going to work even? Nope.
Allen Bible.
That is an Allen
I have an
Bible.
Allen. Allen's the best.
Allen is the best. If a Bible could be the best, I guess. I don't know. Well, obviously it's not because it doesn't have a decent map. I haven't looked at the map.
Better than no map, though.
You guys are funny. Okay, so here we have modern day Turkey or Asia Minor. We have Greece. Down here we have Israel. We have Egypt, and then we have those two lines are supposed to represent the Tigris and the Euphrates River. Okay, so if you have these vision of these empires, you're seeing this ram, which is the Medo-Persian Empire, because it's exactly the representation or the emblem of the Medes and the Persians, and it's moving westward, this way, it's moving southward, and it's moving northward, okay? It obviously gives us an understanding of the empires or the kingdoms that it conquered when it is coming. Remember this again, this is a future event that Daniel is going to experience on his own. So what we're going to see here is that we saw this ram pushing westward, southward, and northward so that no animal could withstand him. So the Medo-Persian Empire will exert its power to the north, south, and west, but we know from history that it didn't really hold any major conquests in the east other than starting again with the taking over of Babylon, which was around this area. So in the north, they go against the Scythians. In the west, where would they go? What do you think?
It's not Greece, is it?
Yeah,
It is
Greece. West to Greece. And if they were to go to south, what do you think?
Egypt.
Egypt. Great. So south, Egypt. Okay? And really, always kind of caught in the middle, which we even see today, is Israel. Okay? All others defeated by this ram. So now what we're going to happen is we're going to get into specifics of now another animal coming up and defeating this great ram with 2 horns and see what it represents. Let's read verse 5 through 8.
Yeah, okay. As I was thinking about this, suddenly a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth with touching the ground. It came toward the 2-horned ram that I had seen standing beside the canal and charged at it in a great rage. I saw it attack the ram furiously, striking the ram and shattering its 2 horns. The ram was powerless to stand against it. The goat knocked it to the ground and trampled on it, and none could rescue the ram from its power. The goat became very great, but at its height of its power the large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven.
Okay, from our understanding again of looking at the visions and seeing the interpretation of them, we can understand that what was this goat going to be?
The Roman Empire?
The Greek Empire.
I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. The Greek Empire. Again, and so we're going to look at these characteristics again from this vision. Did you guys need this?
No.
Okay. Any questions before we jump into this? Am I going too fast?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I just keep having to picture the first,
The statue?
the statue.
Yeah, doesn't that, it's like,
It's very helpful.
yeah, the sections of the head to the body and arms to the torso and the legs to the feet. So it's very easy, again, the head of gold, Babylonian Empire, one thing, okay? Then the chest and the arms of silver are the Medo-Persian Empire, so 2 arms, 2 armies, okay? Belly of bronze, Grecian Empire, legs of iron, the Roman Empire. Okay, good, you guys know all this. So, what happens? This male goat all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, and where is it coming from? Where does it say in verse 5?
West.
From the west. So, what was the country or the kingdom from the west?
Greece.
There you go. Yeah. It's not too hard, is it? From the west, across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. Okay? Look at verse 21. Giving us again. If we wanted to double check our interpretation, what does Gabriel say in verse 21 of chapter 8?
And the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king.
There we go. I mean, for us, this is all very matter of fact, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Just reading it, oh, yeah, okay, of course, blah, blah, blah. But really, when we're looking at this and we're reading this is all future. And really, when we talk about visions of the future, it's always really kind of in a broad context, right? We see kind of in a mirror dimly of the possibilities of something that would happen, right? And we make speculation. This is so specific. This is so specific about what's going to happen, not just 10 years from now when the Medes and the Persians overwhelm the Babylonian Empire, but centuries from now. From Greece to Rome, all the way to where we are standing today in the church age. So we don't want to take it lightly. It'd be good for us, if we possibly can, is to put our perspective in the perspective of Daniel and saying, wow, this is not only something that is just this broad orchestration of God, but very, very specific to the point that we know that it's going to happen. So verse 21, we see it is Greece, and specifically the first king. Who was the first king of Greece?
Alexander the Great.
There you go. Alex, the G. Let's do that, okay? Alexander the Great. So a male goat coming from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. In correlation with verse 21, the goat is the symbol of the Grecian Empire, and the prominent horn, it is Alexander the Great. It speaks of that it is a male goat. Kind of the literal interpretation is like, you know how what's a female deer?
A doe.
A doe. What's a male deer?
Deer.
A buck.
A buck. That's right. So it's like the buck of a goat, right? It's when you ever watch Bambi or something, he's the king of the forest kind of a thing, and he looks like this beautiful strong animal. This is kind of the representation of that of that word male here in the Hebrew. He's like the king of goats, okay? The king of goats showing up, and without touching the ground, he overwhelms the Medo-Persian Empire. We can speculate, but the without touching the ground gives us the idea that he overwhelmed the empire very quickly. It's as if he just did like this one jump and conquered this ram and then established the Grecian Empire. And it's true, he did this without touching the ground in the sense that no other man in history was like Alexander the Great in establishing his empire in only 16 years. Alexander the Great established his empire in just 16 years. And so that's the speculation, or that's kind of the evidence that I think. 16 years' time to establish his empire, okay? Which is pretty amazing if you think about it. He died at the age of what? Do you guys remember? It was a big trivia question.
Like 32.
32, right? So if it took him 16 years to start his empire, when did he start conquering? Like 16 or 17 years old, which is pretty amazing to me. Anyway. So 16 years time to establish his empire. All right. So he did this extremely quickly. We have all these characteristics of this ram. Okay, he ran at him in his powerful wrath. So the characteristics of the battles between the goat and the ram. The battles between the Grecian Empire, Greece, and just for lack of Greece and Persia. If you're like even interested, just searching Google and just say, what are some of the battles of Greece and Persia? You'll find some of the most bloodiest battles. One of the biggest battles to ever happen in history was against these two extremely strong, extremely well-established empires that were very different from Babylon, very different even then from Rome. So we will also see, look at verse 8 then. They fight, they have these battles. The Greek Empire ultimately overcomes Persia. We see the establishment of the Grecian Empire after 16 years very quickly, and then what do we see happen? What happens to the goat?
The
The horn was broken.
The horn is broken off, okay? Horn is broken. What do you guys think happened then?
Alexander died.
That's right. And subsequently, what happens after that?
4 horns come up.
4 horns come up. Okay, great. 4 horns come up, meaning it is the 4 kingdoms that arise as not successive rulers of the Grecian Empire, but consecutive rulers of the Grecian Empire. Those 4 kingdoms are, you guys should know this, we just talked about it.
Was that last week?
That was we just the beginning of
Even at the very, very beginning.
the moccasin ones.
Oh,
Okay?
the moccasins, the Petsuses,
The
the
patriarch,
No, there's no, the P is silent.
the tetrarch, the
Yeah,
Alright guys,
pterodactyl.
do me proud, okay? Let's do it correctly.
the first one is the
Seleucians.
Seleucids, thank you.
Seleucids.
Yes? And that specific kingdom is gonna be very, very impactful in chapter 8, so keep in mind of the Seleucids. Okay, I'll give you the first letters of all of them.
P.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna go get some water, and I wanna know what they are. Yep, S, C,
Without
L,
looking?
Without
and
looking?
P. Yep. 1 second, let me get, I really
Okay.
need a glass of water.
Cassidy.
Oh.
What is it? You said it before. The C.
Oh, Cassander.
Cassander.
And Limachus.
Yep,
Cassander, Lamachus,
Lamachus.
Lamachius.
and
It's a T. It just sounds like T. It's P-T.
patriarchs or patriarch. It's
Not patriarchs.
It's
That's not it.
terrariums.
Terrarium.
Teleudes or
That's an aquarium for like lizards. Terrarium.
what is like
Terrarium.
what is like Telsium or
Oh, that's calcium with a T.
No.
I forgot what we got. Chaldeans. What? Cassidy.
Okay. You guys know?
About 3.
We got
We got
3.
two.
We already had one.
No.
Okay.
Well,
Two.
maybe like 3 total.
Cassidy.
Cassandra.
Sandra.
Cassander. Got it. Good job.
Limachus.
Lysimachus. Good.
We can get that one now. Lysimachus.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
Elizamachus.
Lysimachus.
Lysimachus.
And,
But it's I don't know how to say it. T is the next letter.
right? Correct.
T-Y.
T-O.
Or not.
Ptolemaics.
Ptolemaics.
I was not close to that. That's
Okay.
not. I thought it would ring.
All right. So you have 4 horns come up: Seleucids, Cassander, Lysimachus, and the Ptolemaics. Okay. You guys are gonna be, once you have your final, you guys will know it very, very well. Okay. And what happens? Alexander the Great dies. They divide the kingdom up into 4 kingdoms that rule consecutively the Grecian Empire. So we know 4 kingdoms. We know they're going to be north, south, east, and west. Correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So this will definitely be on your final.
And how to spell them?
I would love it if you spelled
Okay.
them correctly. Yeah. If you can see my if you can read my writing. So we have the 4 rulers of the Greek Empire ruled their own dominions, not the entire empire together. They ruled their own dominions. We have Cassander, which ruled Greece and the surrounding areas. Okay. All right. We have the Lysimachus, which ruled Asia Minor. Who can tell me what Asia Minor is?
It's Turkey.
Thank you. Which is Turkey. And then we have Ptolemy, or the Ptolemaics, which ruled Egypt. Okay? And then specifically, like I said, which we're going to spend some focus on in chapter 8, the Seleucids, which reigned over Israel and the surrounding areas. Okay? That's going to play a part in the future. Great. Melgoat, west. Grecian Empire, first king, Alexander the Great. He's the king of the goats. Without touching the ground, meaning the fastness or the speed upon which he established his empire, only taking him 16 years to establish his empire. Many of the famous battles fought in history were Greece versus Persia. And then the horn is broken off of the goat, which was Alexander the Great dies. 4 horns come out of that, of course not being as prominent as the great horn. We have the Seleucids, Cassander, the Lysimachus, and the Ptolemaics. Seleucids reigning Israel, surrounding area. Cassander ruling Greece. Lysimachus, Asia Minor or Turkey. And the Ptolemaics, which is Egypt. Everybody have that? Okay? What else we know about the Greek Empire? I mean, even today, how impactful is Greek culture even up to this point, right? We see all throughout history that the Greek Empire lasts not only in land, but in the Hellenistic culture of the day that we see even throughout the book of Acts and into the New Testament. Aramaic, which was the international language of the time, which we would even consider probably English today being the most international language of business and politics. It was Aramaic back then because of the Babylonian Empire. Well, once the Greek Empire came into play, everything was changed to Greek. Okay, that's why ultimately our New Testament, the original language, is in Greek, because it was that international language of the day. Okay, so it was a dominion that not only lasted with land and time, but ultimately in culture, even past its demise, entering in with the Roman Empire. Okay. So that's what we have. We have this picture, the ram and the goat. Now the goat being established as the one who has conquered all, and then we continue into the vision. Anybody have any questions about this or anything previous up to this point? Is it clear or is it unclear?
Clear.
Clear? Clear? Okay, great. Who wants to read verse 9 through 12? Anyone?
Alright.
Great.
Out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, and it threw some of the starry host down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the prince of the host. It took away the daily sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was brought low. Because of rebellion, the host of the saints and the daily sacrifice were given over to it. It prospered in everything it did, and truth was thrown to the ground.
Okay. Truth was thrown to the ground. Gives us a kind of an idea of a picture. So let's investigate this. From what we know, we can draw a conclusion to what's happening here. So out of one of them, what was them?
Horns?
The horns. Out of one of the horns comes a little horn, which grew exceedingly great towards, notice here, the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. Now here's the big clue here. Whenever the glorious land is mentioned in the Old Testament, that is Israel. Okay? The glorious land think about this. If you're a man, if you're a woman and you're displaced out of your home country, you've lived the majority of your life in a foreign land, but you have this idea of what home is like, right? All of us have an idea of what home is like, what our comfort is, where we find our refuge, where we find our rest, where we love to be under the care of maybe our parents or our family or friends. We always think of that as something that, oh, it's just so beautiful in my mind. Of what I'm missing because I'm not there. That's kind of the idea of what Daniel is thinking of. But he's establishing that with also some other scriptural references that speak of the glorious land of Israel. We have Psalms 106, verse 24. We have Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 19. We have Daniel later on in Daniel chapter 11, which is a huge chapter in Daniel. Daniel 11, verse 16. And then we have, of course, contemporary of Daniel, we have Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 6, and 25, verse 9. Okay, so if, looking at these verses, out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land, which horn does this little horn come out of, do you think? Which kingdom? Look at your notes.
Israel.
The Israel, okay. Who
Wait.
reigned over Israel?
Like the Seleucids.
The Seleucids, okay? So that should give us an idea. Okay, here's a little horn that came out of one of the horns, one of the kingdoms. This little horn came out of the Seleucid kingdom if the glorious land is speaking of Israel. So that's the conclusion we can make. This little horn comes out of the Seleucids. Okay. I should write Empire, should write Kingdom. There's a difference. Seleucid Kingdom. Is that stretching your guys' brains, or you guys got it? Okay. The question that we have to ask ourselves now is, reading this section, let's look over kind of with a fine-tooth comb. I'll read it again aloud and draw your attention to who might this little horn be, because we've encountered a little horn before, have we not? From chapter 7. And what was that little horn?
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist, right? So what would this little horn be? Verse 9 through 12, let me read it once more as we really focus on what we've already learned. Out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. It grew great, even to the host of heaven. And some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host. And the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown, and a host will be given over it together with the regular burnt offering because of transgression, and it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Is this a historical figure from our past but Daniel's future? Or is this, in fact, a figure of the future, possibly being the Antichrist? That's the big question that we need to ask ourselves, because of the fact that we're looking at prophecy from Daniel's perspective, but we're also looking at prophecy from our own perspective, okay? Not simply just applying something and making it relevant to our modern day, but seeing, is there a double meaning to what we're reading here in chapter 8? Okay? That's the question that we ask ourselves. And since I know that we probably won't go all the way to 4:15 or 4:10, let's take a break now, because we're going to get into some heavy stuff concerning a specific person in the Grecian Empire, which is a prefigure of the Antichrist, this man called Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay. So, looking specifically now at the Grecian Empire, specifically at the Seleucid Kingdom, specifically now a ruler of the Seleucid Kingdom, Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay? So, how does he connect to Israel, which is now the focus of Daniel? Daniel's writing now in the connection to what will happen to Israel in the Grecian Empire. Again, what does this substantiate? Maybe why he's writing in Hebrew, okay? Because this directly affects the nation of Israel and its people, okay? So, what we have, of course, is those four kingdoms, Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucid, and Ptolemaics, and they're having their separate kingdoms being over the conglomeration of the Grecian Empire, but they're not friends, okay? They're not the best of buddies and all of unity together, and they oftentimes fight against each other. So at the very beginning, we have a battle, or we have, I guess, a competition between two kingdoms. Two kingdoms. Remember, we have Egypt over here, right? We have the east over here. And who do we have right in between? Israel. Israel, right? So Egypt, and we have the east. So, east is owned by the Seleucids, right? Who owns Egypt at this time, or who runs Egypt? Ptolemaics, right? So, who's caught between a rock and a hard place? Israel. So we have these kingdoms vying for power here in the middle. Why is Israel always put on really the kind of the chopping block when it's concerning warring empires? Because of the fact is that right through here is probably the greatest trade route of the known world at that time. If you own Israel, you own the ports from the Mediterranean Sea all the way through down into the Middle East and the rest of Asia, or down here into Egypt and through ultimately Africa. So Israel is always put in an interesting spot, at least geographically. So we have the Ptolemaics and we have the Seleucids, and they're fighting one another for control of the glorious land. And these conquests are confirmed in the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, who reigns from 175 to 164 BC. Okay? He reigns from 175 to 164 BC. The land was contested between the dynasties of Seleucid and Ptolemy, but the Seleucids gained power over the region in the days of Antiochus III. This is not Antiochus III. Antiochus III was his father. So, Antiochus III gets control of Israel. We'll put Anti number 3, okay? You guys know Roman numerals, right? Okay, great. So Antiochus III gains power and takes control over the glorious land in 198 BC. Okay? 198 BC, he takes control of the trade route and of Israel. So what happens after this? One would naturally gain if you are the son of an emperor or you're the son of a ruler, and you have brothers, who gets the kingdom first? The oldest brother, right? So this is exactly what happened with Antiochus. But Antiochus Epiphanes was not the oldest brother at the time, okay? So what happens is this. Antiochus IV, this is Antiochus Epiphanes, so we'll just do that real quickly. Antiochus IV gains the throne of his father, Antiochus III, by murdering his brother, the former king Seleucus Philopator. Okay? So, his brother is his name Seleucus Philopator, or Pater. Okay? Seleucus Philopator. Let me try to do this in a way that's clear to make it really as easy as possible for you guys. We'll start it this way. We have Antiochus III. All right. After he dies, his son Seleucid Philopator takes the throne, okay? Or supposed to take the throne. He has a son. Seleucid has a son, which I don't have. Do I have his name on here? No. He has a son who's going to be the rightful heir. But what happens? His brother, Antiochus IV, kills Seleucid. So killed by IV. And what does he do? He kidnaps his nephew, the son of Seleucid Philopator, and takes him to Rome, actually. Holds him in hostage in Rome. IV holds the son. I thought I had his name on there. I'm sorry, guys. That's not very clear. Holds son hostage, and basically through extortion, through bribery, and through kidnapping, Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV, takes control of the Seleucid kingdom. Okay? So he takes control of the Seleucid kingdom and changes his name from Antiochus IV now to Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, what does Epiphanes mean? You guys know what an epiphany is? You ever heard that before?
Kind of like a realization.
Yeah, I just had an epiphany. Or it's something that is a revelation to not just intelligence, but it's a revelation to the divine. Okay, it's revelation to something that is ethereal or something that is grand in nature. But he calls himself Epiphanes, which is in the literal definition means illustrious, or in the most literal definition, he calls himself a manifestation of a divine being. Isn't that interesting? He calls himself a manifestation of a divine being, or, for lack of a better term, a god, okay? Who else is calling himself a manifestation of a divine being? That, of course, would be the Antichrist, okay? And the Antichrist. So often when we say Antichrist, and we know this, of course, from our studying of 1 John, what do we think of when we see the word anti? Against, right? So if you are against something, you're anti something. But anti also, in its true definition, means in the form of, okay? So anti can mean against, but it could also mean in the form of, or a false substitution, okay? So when we speak of the Antichrist, specifically in Revelation, we automatically think he's the enemy of God, he's the enemy of all believers, so he must be against Christ. But John, in his epistles, 1st through 3rd John, he speaks of the Antichrist, but he speaks in more in the context of saying that he is a form of Christ. In fact, deluding the people, confusing the people, and to make them think, oh, he is another form of God himself coming to earth and giving us new revelations. And we've seen this all throughout history. We see, in effect, examples of Antichrist all the time. People, Charles Manson, right? Or we think of cult leaders, David Koresh. We think of all these guys who led these people to believe, oh, he's another Messiah, or he is the Messiah. He's Jesus come back from the flesh, and we should worship him because that's who he is. Well, no, he's in fact a form of the Antichrist who comes in the form of Jesus, but is in fact not Jesus himself. Okay? So here's Antiochus Epiphanes, meaning illustrious or a manifestation of a divine being, but also is a prefigurement or kind of an example, a foretaste of what the Antichrist will be like. And we'll see this, of course, when we get into how he relates specifically to Israel. All right? Everybody have that? Yes.
My one question is, so Antiochus Epiphanes was holding whose son?
His brother, Seleucid Philopator's son.
Who he killed.
He killed.
Seleucid Philopator.
Right. He killed him. So his son was supposed to be on the throne, but his son was a young person at the time. He kidnaps him into Rome and basically forces him to say, my uncle is now the king and I'm not. Okay?
And Antiochus III is Seleucid.
Is Antiochus III is Antiochus Epiphanes and Seleucid's dad.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Okay.
Okay. Here. Father, brother, nephew? That's what it is. Does that connect?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so now we connect. Okay, here's this man. He runs the Seleucid dynasty or the Seleucid kingdom, and he has control over Israel. What happens to Israel while this man, Antiochus Epiphanes, who calls himself basically a manifestation of God, what happens to the nation of Israel who follows God? God who is not ever going to be fashioned into a visual picture or an idol for them to worship. What happens to the land of Israel? Well, this is what we're going to discover. So, Antiochus sets his eyes on Israel because we know, again, the value of having a land that has a perfect trade route from the Mediterranean Sea all throughout the rest of the known world. So this is what he does first. What is he going to do first? In a land that is solely following God as their prime directive, their prime existence of how they live, what is he going to do first? He's going to start messing with the religion, right? He's going to start messing with the Jewish faith system. And the very first thing that he does, he drives out, so we'll take this now. It's all part of the history. He drives out the high priest. First thing that Antiochus Epiphanes, A.E., does is he drives out the high priest. This high priest was Onias, okay? And in the place of this high priest, he elects one that is loyal to him, all right? So he elects a loyal high priest to himself, this man named Jason. Those Jasons are always bad people, aren't they? Elects a loyal high priest named Jason, okay? What we have now through this becomes this conglomeration or this myriad of just bad political backbiting and betrayal for ultimate power in Israel. Jason is replaced by another man named Menelaus, who purchases the position for Antiochus and takes it from Jason. It becomes this whole thing that is just not any connection to what the biblical understanding of a high priest over a temple is. And so what happens is, this man Jason has power, right? He has control. But then he's upsetted of his power by a man who just simply has more money. This man is named, like I said, I'm going to mess it up, Menelaus. Menelaus takes over from Jason the position of high priest. The position of high priest by basically giving money to Antiochus Epiphanes. And Antiochus Epiphanes could care less. All he wants is a nation that is subject to him. Menelaus takes over from Jason the position of high priest by giving money to Antiochus Epiphanes. Well, what happens with Jason? Jason gets upset, he gets angry, and what does he do? He grabs an army and invades Jerusalem with his army, okay? Jason grabs an army with an army and invades Jerusalem. And what does he do there? He grabs troops, he attacks Jerusalem, hoping to assert his power as high priest again. And while he is doing this, Antiochus Epiphanes hears about it and says, you know what, that's it. I'm coming to Jerusalem myself, and I'm going to establish my power on the throne over this so-called Hebrew God that all of these people think has all the power. And then what we have is what Jesus declares in Matthew chapter 24. We have this great thing, and maybe if you've heard of it before, the abomination of desolation. You guys ever heard of that? Okay? It's something that's happened historically, but again, it also points to a directive of the future. And so concerning Antiochus Epiphanes, he enters into Jerusalem, absolutely wipes out all of the males, almost all of the males of the city. He goes to the temple, erects an idol of Zeus, and then on the altar takes a pig and slits the throat of it as a sacrifice to his idol god Zeus, desecrating the entire temple. Okay? That is historically the abomination of desolation. Okay? So that's what Antiochus Epiphanes does. He enters AE, kills all the men, and then we have the abomination of desolation. Now, in Matthew 24, Jesus speaks of the abomination of desolation as a future event. He talks about it in a way that we need to be aware of because, again, Antiochus Epiphanes is what he thinks a manifestation of a divine being. He is a prefigurement of the Antichrist. And so his actions reveal to us the future of what we are going to experience when we see the Antichrist come into power. Where I think we'll be in the clouds with Jesus witnessing it ourselves. But we have the abomination of desolation, which is the sacrifice of a pig. On the temple altar. And through this, what we have then is one of the greatest stories, historical stories, of Israel as a nation. Really one of the most patriotic stories, I guess, that you would consider a nation of Israel to have. Antiochus Epiphanes puts all of his focus on Israel, and he says, from now on, I'm not going to write this down, but it's just important for you guys to understand the story. He says, from now on, none of you guys are allowed to worship the God of Israel. You're to worship Zeus and Zeus alone. You're to worship the gods that I have set up before you, since I am a manifestation of God himself, and you are going to worship me. So all of the towns where they have synagogues, places to learn the Torah, places to learn the law, they're not allowed to be there anymore. They can only worship these Greek false gods. Okay? From that point on, he commands that he be worshipped and no other, desecrating the temple, for saying that you cannot follow the Sabbath, saying that you cannot follow sacrifices, and you must worship Zeus. Ultimately, and I will write this down, he was responsible for the murder of 100,000 Jews. Okay? A very, very evil, evil man. All right? So now I want to lay down to you guys a story that is found in the Apocrypha as a historical story. It is true because it is a historical document, and we know that it happened. It is not, in fact, inspired by Scripture. That's why we don't have it in our canon of 66 books. But let me just read this to you and to give you guys some meaning, because this is what we discover here in chapter 8. All through Israel, altars to Zeus were set up, and the Jews were forced to sacrifice to them. But at a little Jewish town called Modin, 17 miles northwest of Jerusalem, there lived a Jewish priest named Matthias of the house of Hasmon. He had 5 sons, and this brave old man not only refused to worship Antiochus Epiphanes' idols, but he killed the king's religious ambassador when he came to the town. Okay? Very Braveheart-ish, I guess. The Jewish revolt started based upon the killing of this religious ambassador. And then one of his, and here's the name that I want you guys to really know. This man named Judas Maccabeus, okay? One of his sons leads a revolt that actually tips the scales, and they're able to take over Israel again from the Grecian Empire. Then we have something that is very small in time called the Hasmonean dynasty. That lasts until the Roman Empire comes and takes over all of Israel. Okay? Judas Maccabeus overwhelms the Greek influence or the Greek control over Israel. They begin their own kind of kingdom in a way over Israel, the Maccabees, called the Hasmonean dynasty, until the beginning of the Roman Empire. You guys ever heard the Jewish festival of Hanukkah before? That is the celebration of that event, okay? The Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah, is the event of Judas Maccabeus overthrowing the Greek Empire, because he did it on December 25th, 165 BC. Okay, I know that's a lot for us to take in. If you guys want that story, I can email it to you for your guys' notes later on. Okay, so this is what we see here in the consequent verses, where it says, it grew great even to the host of heaven, speaking of the little horn, verse 10 of chapter 8 of Daniel, and verse 10, it grew great even to the host of heaven. Some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host, and the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. Verse 11 is that historical event of Antiochus Epiphanes desecrating the temple. And a host will be given over to it, together with the regular burnt offering, because of transgression. It will throw truth to the ground and will act and prosper. So now we continue. I'm going to jump forward and look at verse 13 and 14. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. And this is prophecy from the Holy One speaking to Daniel of what will happen years later from what he's experiencing now. And this is exactly what happened. For a period of 2,300 days was the day from the desolation of abomination to the point that the temple was restored to its former glory. And they were able to begin again the sacrifices. So, let's continue on, because we are running out of time. Verse 15 through 20. Now we get the interpretation of what's being said. Anybody want to read that? 15 through 20.
I'll read it.
Great, thank you.
While I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there before me stood one that looked like a man. And I heard a man's voice from the
Ulai, yeah, sure.
Ulai, calling, Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision. As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified and fell prostrate. Son of man, he said to me, understand that the vision concerns the time of the end. While he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep, with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and raised me to my feet. He said, I am going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the visions concern the appointed time of the end. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of the Media and the Persia. You said to what?
Why don't you go ahead and, go ahead and read to verse 26.
The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king. The 4 horns that replaced the one that was broken off represents the 4 kingdoms that will emerge from this nation but will not have the same power. In the latter part of the reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise, who will become very strong but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation, will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty to the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. The vision of the evenings and the mornings that you have been given to you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future.
So this presents to us a picture. It gives us a connection of not only what's happened in history with Antiochus Epiphanes, but really points to the ultimate destruction of the Antichrist and the establishment of Jesus Christ as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Notice what it says here. Verse 24, his power shall be great, but not by his own power. He shall cause fearful destruction and shall succeed in what he does, and he shall destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. Okay? That could be connected then to Antiochus Epiphanes, very clear, and saying this is the Grecian Empire, these are the kings of Greece, and here is one who desolates the place where the saints, as we know in the Old Testament, those following God, gather to worship him. Makes his deceit prosper under his hand, verse 25. And in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many. He shall even rise up against the Prince of Princes, and he shall be broken, but by no human hand. This should alert in our mind this connection that this is Antiochus Epiphanes, but it's also pointing to the Antichrist. What we have to understand here is that Antiochus Epiphanes is a foreshadowing or a foretaste of a future person that we don't know yet, that we're still waiting on, who will establish himself, who will establish a false sense of peace for 3.5 years, and then ultimately gather the nations together, not just against those who are faithful to Jesus and faithful to God, but will gather the nations together against God himself. The prophet Zechariah, who spoke 500 plus years before the coming of Jesus, speaks of the Messiah who's going to come and stand his foot upon the Mount of Olives, who's going to crack the Mount of Olives from east to west, and who will enter into the Valley of Armageddon, where all the nations of the earth are gathered to fight against God himself. And he, in just one moment, will destroy all that which is evil in this world and establish his kingdom ultimately forever and forever. But this is speaking of this connection that we need to be aware of. When we're speaking of Jewish prophecy, it's not always just this blatant thing that we understand, but also a connection to not just history, but ultimately into the future. And you know what? It provides, again, speculation for us to say, well, is it only historical? Is it only future? All throughout church history, we've had many scholars who have gone on one side or the other. John Calvin, he thought what Daniel is speaking of only speaks of Antiochus Epiphanes. But then we have Martin Luther. Martin Luther believed what I'm thinking or making the connection to, that not only is this a historical prophecy for us, but also a future prophecy of the Antichrist. So we have there in verse 21 and 26, ultimately the demise of Antiochus Epiphanes, but the demise also of the Antichrist. Looking at verse 25 and 26 in the emphasis, he will rise against the Prince of Princes, but will not prevail. He shall be broken, but by no human hand. There's nothing in the earth that is able to conquer against this man who seemingly has the power of the dragon that we see in Revelation, but Christ himself.